This is a video I thought would be kind of interesting because a lot of people don't even touch upon the subject, and I thought it would be an interesting topic. So I went to go and touch upon 4 various video game websites that not only do I frequent very, very often, but I actually have been going to these websites for years upon years upon years now, and have been very invested in all the content that they have on there. And I've not only learned a bunch from going to these websites, but they've aided me in, trying to learn things about video games, checking out new franchises, the import scene, just a whole bunch of stuff. So the first website I want to go and talk about is Hardcore Gaming 101. And Hardcore Gaming 101 is a website that typically I end up going there because they cover a lot of niche titles and franchises, things that typically get overlooked, which is a shame because, all of us can think of games out there that sold for shit, but are completely fantastic. It's just for one reason or another, and there's tons of variables that we could go and toss into the hat as to why it didn't sell all that well, but the games were still fantastic regardless, and that's one of the reasons why I like the website so much. And they go into great detail when talking about them, and it's interesting because they also have made a series of books. I own one of them, and it's interesting because I ended up picking up the book without knowing that this was being published and created by Hardcore Gaming 101, and that was Sega Arcade Classics Volume 1, which is a great book in general, obviously, because I bought the fucking thing and was like, holy shit, it's from a website that, I go and check out and stuff. And they have a Castlevania one that I also want to get, and there's a couple other ones that they make, but going through all their articles, again, I found new games thanks to this website, and they talk about them at great detail, and they cover things, within the PAL regions in Japan only, and, things here obviously in NTSC in North America and Canada and stuff, but it's a very kick-ass website. I implore you to go and check it out, especially if you want to learn stuff about games that you may not have ever heard of, or just be able to see people appreciating some franchises and games, systems, and the like that you like a whole bunch, but nobody else fucking talks about whatsoever, but they'd actually be featured on there. So the next website that I want to talk about, and this is something that I actually don't get to mention a whole bunch on here, but now I get to go and have an opportunity to do that, but there's Unseen64. And Unseen64, they specialize in betas and unreleased games and alpha builds and all sorts of other things. And I like that a whole bunch because I'm one of those people, like, if I get really interested in a franchise or a game or anything like that, I want to see, well, what did it look like before this? So, what did some of the concept art look like? If there's a debug mode in the game, can I check out parts of the game that weren't actually included with it? And there's so many things like that, and I've always enjoyed that aspect of gaming, and sometimes you end up finding about these unreleased games. Like, just off the top of my head, for example, Toe Jam and Earl 3 had shown up as an Xbox exclusive, and Toe Jam and Earl was a big franchise for the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive. And the original version of Toe Jam and Earl 3 was actually on the Dreamcast, and Unseen64 had talked about that a whole bunch before it ended up becoming common knowledge that this thing was on, you were able to go and pick it up, on the internet and stuff because somebody had found it on a development kit. Just, they bought a Dreamcast development kit and it was right there. Resident Evil 1.5 and Resident Evil 3.5, both of those titles had been covered heavily on there. A system that most people don't even know about, the M2, which was going to come out around the time of PlayStation, Saturn, Nintendo 64, and all that. That system had a bunch of games on it. One of the most noteworthy games of it, myself being a big horror fan, is D2, which came out on Dreamcast. And the original version of that was on the M2, and I got to read all about that while on there. And again, you can check out like so many games that just never got released, or games that eventually got reworked down the road and became something else entirely. And I've always enjoyed the website for that. I've followed them on Facebook, on Twitter. I've been going to the website for years. And it's just an interesting read. I know that that's not something that everybody's going to be interested in. You know, not everybody goes and gets a movie on Blu-ray or DVD and checks out the deleted scenes and stuff. You know, I'm one of those people who likes to go and do that, because if you're really invested in the product, you want to see all the extra content or the what-ifs or could-have-beens. You know, and that's one of the reasons why I've always liked those kind of sites and just thought they were kind of badass. So, you know, that's a website that I've always want to share with everybody and say, you know, you need to check this out. You will like it a whole bunch. So, you know, there's that. And it's unique. It really is. It's a unique website that you don't see all that often. You know, people don't cover that stuff typically. And they're usually on top of shit, so I like that. Another one, which is a lot more well-known, but it's a website that I've liked for years upon years now, because it's been kind of a go-to source in many ways for me, and that's GameFAQs.com. And GameFAQs, which ended up merging with GameSpot, but GameFAQs is just written cheats, guides, walkthroughs, you name it, for tons of games by gamers. And I have loved that website because there are so many times that there's been a game or a franchise or something like that I was playing through and I got lost. And, you know, nowadays, you know, modern era, we can just go on YouTube and find a walkthrough and go and view it that way. But on GameFAQs was around for years and years. You know, that was... Hell, that's actually one of the first gaming websites I can think of off the top of my head that I was going to. GameSpot, IGN, and GameFAQs are three of the earliest websites that I can remember. But it was IGN 64 back then. For anybody who's just like, I remember them days. AOL discs you could still find in a fucking grocery store. So, but GameFAQs, it's handy as shit. You know, also drop like Control F and try to find the actual area that I'm in, and I'll scroll down to that area and I'll go and read it. And I have such an appreciation for anybody that takes the time and effort and goes into that, because plenty of these games, a lot of times, they don't have any strategy guides that were ever created for them. And you might be playing a game that nobody did a walkthrough of on YouTube, so even, you know, modern era, somebody might not have something like that, and you'll be clicking through like part 15, part 16, part 17, where the fuck is it? And it's a 23-minute long video, so you're sitting there scrolling through it. So I kind of like it for stuff like this, and they have in-depth, detailed guides for specific games. Sometimes they're like, okay, this right here is just all about, you know, item creation, and it's a guide specifically just for that. Sometimes you're just looking for cheat codes, which I miss cheat codes, by the way, in video games. But I thought it was just cool that they have stuff like that, and they have a big-ass community of people that are on there. There's also lots of reviews that are on there. I remember, I think I wrote like 2 reviews like eons ago, absolutely eons. I don't even know if they're still there or not. I ought to go check that out. I think one of them was for Guilty Gear, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a very good website. And the last one is romhacking.net. Now, romhacking.net is a very important website to me because I've been a big-time fan of just ROM hacks in general, and not the traditional ROM hacks that you're thinking of where somebody will take Super Mario World and just reorganize all the levels into something absolutely insane, but they have the actual translation section, which is its own section completely to itself, where it's Japanese to English translations. And I'm talking, they cover so much shit. You'll see stuff for the MSX. You'll see stuff for PlayStation 1. You'll see stuff for PlayStation 2, Dreamcast, Nintendo 64, Super Nintendo, you know, you name it, TurboGrafx, it's on there. Sega CD, it's intense how much stuff is on there. Currently, right now, as a matter of fact, I'm playing through Pokemon the Trading Card Game 2 on the Visual Boy Advance, because that's the only way that I can actually play through it. But this thing was, it was taking such a long time to be translated because there was only one person, and then somebody else went and picked up the work and then ran with it and finished it. You know, and I love that. Sweet Home for NES, if it wasn't for people translating shit, that wouldn't have happened. Look at the original Mother game on Famicom, and then Mother 3 on Game Boy Advance. Those were translated by fans, and a lot of that stuff you can find on there. And I've been finding out about games and franchises, like there's one called it's Famicom Detective Club, and they have it for Famicom and then Super Famicom, and I really like Super Famicom version, but I've always been a fan of digital novel type games and point and click adventure type stuff, and this is a whodunit murder mystery type game. And it's really interesting because this is developed and published by Nintendo, and it's a mature rated game. And it's so weird that they never really touch upon it, and I think it's a shame because it's such a fantastic game. And I played through the first Detective Club, now going through the second one. I have to keep going back and playing through it, but it's just amazing to see the time and effort that people have gone through to go and make some of this shit happen. I've got a list like a mile long of games that I would love to see translated, you know. Now, I was so happy to hear when fans had translated Fatal Frame 4, for example, and you'd have that patch and you could play it on your Nintendo Wii. And RomHacking.net, if you go through it, seriously, always make sure that when you're going through it, there is a tab, or a little drop-down box, rather. Make sure that you go to the section of the ones that are 100% completed. Because, you know, sometimes people will put up the work and it's like, you know, this is what we have done so far. It'll be like 1/4 of the way through or halfway finished. So you want the ones that are completely finished. And anybody out there that's very savvy with Japanese and, you know, also English, if you ever want to go and help out with stuff like that, there's plenty of people out there doing that shit that could use the help. And, you know, if I was bilingual and was able to do shit like that, I'd fucking totally jump on that. But this is something, again, just a really good website. And all these websites, I can assure you 100% are very fucking badass. I'm going to include links for every single one of them inside of the description. If you do go to any of them and you do enjoy them, you know, please, by all means, share. And if you do end up checking them out and you do like them a bunch, please leave a comment. Just, you know, say whatever it is. Just, I don't know, I thought it'd be kind of a cool topic because it's not something I get to talk about. Typically it's just, you know, video game news related shit. You know, I can name off tons of different video game websites that cover modern news, and even non-gaming websites that cover modern news, but these sites are dedicated strictly to video games, and they'll cover all the stuff that nobody has heard of and nobody's given shit about, and that's some of the stuff that I like a bunch. I like the niche, I like the absurd, I like, you know, the underground, I like that kind of stuff, and it's just something I dig a whole bunch. So, hope you enjoyed this video and maybe learned a thing or two or some shit like that. I have no fucking clue. Either way, this is AlphaOmegaSin. As always, nerds, nerdettes, and gamers, game the fuck on.